Speak Daily English. Real English every day.
Okay, let's dive into something I think, well, most of us feel a little bit tense about. Difficult conversations.
Oh, yeah, that feeling.
You know, the ones you sort of put off,
Yeah.
maybe. And let's be real, if you're having that conversation in English and it's maybe not your first language, that feeling can just go way up.
Absolutely. That anxiety it's so common. You're juggling the emotional weight of the thing itself and trying to find the right words, the right tone in English. That's a lot for the brain to handle.
It really is. So today we're doing a deep dive into some really practical stuff focused on exactly this, how you handle those tricky conversations, how you navigate conflict, specifically when you're doing it in English.
Right.
Our mission here is to pull out the strategies, the language tools, the things that can genuinely help you feel more confident, more clear in those moments that feel, well, tough.
And we'll dig into why they're tough for anyone.
Yeah.
Then layer on the specific English challenges. We'll look at prep, listening, how you say your piece, and even cultural bits.
Definitely need to touch on culture.
Okay, so let's start right there. Why is this stuff so hard? Like fundamentally, even before English gets involved.
Well, at the core, you're often dealing with conflict, right? A mismatch of needs or ideas or what people expect. And our brains, well, they see conflict and they immediately think threat. That old fight or flight response just kicks in.
Okay, so it's primal.
Totally. You immediately start anticipating negative feelings. Am I going to get angry? Are they going to get angry? Am I going to get my feelings hurt?
Right, it feels risky and uncertain. Like, could this blow up? Could it wreck the relationship? Or just make everything, worse than it already is?
Exactly. That fear of the unknown outcome is huge. Now, you layer English onto that. What do you see as the biggest hurdle there for someone maybe working in their second or third language? I think it often comes back to that mental bandwidth thing we mentioned. You're trying to process your own emotions, manage the other person's emotions, stay calm, and search for the right words, the right grammar, the right politeness level, all at the same time. It's like juggling flaming torches while riding a unicycle.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And there's that fear underneath it all. Did I actually understand what they just said? Am I making my point clearly? English has so many nuances, idioms. Getting it slightly wrong, it feels like a big risk when the stakes are high.
Oh, absolutely. And culture, we can't skip that. How we communicate, how direct we are, how we show disagreement, it varies so much.
It really does.
Think about, say, the U.S. context, often pretty direct, professionally speaking, but even that needs careful handling compared to maybe more indirect styles elsewhere. It's confusing.
Totally. You're not just translating words. You're trying to decode these invisible rules about politeness, about how much emotion is okay to show, how you even signal disagreement. So, feeling anxious when you're navigating all that. Perfectly understandable.
But, and this is the important bit, feeling anxious or finding it hard doesn't mean you can't do it. Getting better at handling these conversations, even in English, it's a skill. It's something you can absolutely learn.
100%. And a huge part of building that skill happens before you even open your mouth in the actual conversation. We're talking preparation.
Yes. The behind-the-scenes work.
Exactly. A lot of how well a difficult conversation goes is actually decided before it starts.
Yeah.
And it begins with a mindset shift, a really critical one.
Okay, a mindset shift. Tell me more.
It's moving away from thinking of it as a fight, like I need to win this argument. Instead, you frame it as, okay, we have a problem here or a difference. How can we work together to understand it and find a solution?
So shifting from confrontation to collaboration.
Precisely. Thinking us versus the problem, not me versus you.
I like that frame. Us versus the problem. It changes the whole feel, doesn't it? So what are the key steps, internally, to get into that headspace?
Okay, first step. Get really, really clear on your positive objective. What do you actually want to achieve? Not just venting, but what's a constructive outcome? Is it understanding? Is it a specific behavior change? Is it reaching an agreement on X? Knowing that goal keeps you anchored.
Right, it stops you from just getting reactive. It's your compass.
Exactly. Second, make a genuine effort to understand the other person's perspective before you talk. Like really try to step into their shoes. Why might they see it this way? What could their needs or worries be? You don't have to agree, but trying to see it from their angle, that builds empathy, big time.
Yeah, that definitely softens the edges, makes it less adversarial.
It really does. Third, get a handle on your own emotions beforehand. These topics, they stir things up. Acknowledge what you're feeling. Are you frustrated, anxious, annoyed? Just notice it. Maybe do some deep breaths, whatever works for you. The goal is to go in as calm and centered as possible.
Easier said than done sometimes, maybe, but crucial for clear thinking.
Well, for sure. And fourth, gather your facts. What are the objective, observable details? Separate those from your interpretations or feelings.
Okay, give me an example, like the missed deadline one.
Perfect. The fact is, the deadline was Tuesday. The report arrived Thursday. Your interpretation might be, they're so unreliable. Or, they don't respect deadlines, but when you talk, stick to the fact, the date difference.
Got it. Stick to what you can actually point to.
Exactly. So clear goal, empathy, emotional self-check, objective facts. That's the internal prep. What about the language side, the English part?
Right. This is key too. You anticipate the kind of language you might need. Think about the topic. What specific vocabulary relates to this? Are there key phrases that could help you state your point clearly or ask a question politely or, just keep things moving constructively?
So not writing a full script, obviously.
No, definitely not. But maybe having a few phrases handy, like a little communication toolkit ready to go.
Exactly. Phrases for how you might start, how you use those I statements we'll talk about, how you listen actively, how you disagree without causing offense, how you suggest solutions. Just having those mentally lined up or even jotted down somewhere quick, it really reduces that feeling of panic like, what do I say now?
Okay, so prep is internal mindset and external language tools. It sounds like just doing that prep work could seriously boost your confidence before you even walk into the room.
Oh, massively. Knowing you've thought it through, you have a goal, you've considered their side, and you have some language tools ready, that gives you a sense of control. It really dials down the anxiety.
Okay, so you've done your prep. You're feeling maybe not great, but more ready. You start the conversation. The other person starts talking. What's the absolute #1 skill you need to switch on right then?
Active listening. Hands down, it is the foundation.
Yeah.
Especially when things are tense or there's potential for misunderstanding. And it's more than just, not talking. It's showing you're genuinely trying to grasp their entire message, the words, the feeling behind them, their whole perspective. It's huge for resolving conflict.
We hear active listening thrown around a lot, but what does it actually look like, especially if you're listening in English and maybe processing a tiny bit slower?
It's a mix of things you do. First, just basic attention. Put your phone away. Turn away from your computer screen. Make eye contact. And yeah, norms vary, but in many Western places like the U.S., reasonable eye contact says, I'm engaged. Lean in slightly, nod, show you're present.
Okay, the physical signals.
Yep. Then use small verbal cues to show you're tracking. Really simple stuff in English works great. Okay. I see. Right. That makes sense. Little sounds that say, keep going, I'm following you, without actually interrupting their flow.
Got it. Small signals, big impact.
Exactly. Third, and this is maybe the most powerful bit for making sure you're on the same page, paraphrasing.
Saying it back in your own words.
Yes. To check your understandings, like a safety net. You can start with phrases like, okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, you're feeling. Or, so what I'm hearing is that right? Or let me just make sure I've got this right. You're saying X happened and that caused Y.
That catches misunderstandings right away, doesn't it, before they spiral?
Instantly. So effective. Fourth, ask clarifying questions. Don't just assume you know what they mean by a certain word or why something bothered them. Ask open-ended questions, the ones that need more than a yes-no answer.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Sure. Things like, could you tell me a bit more about that situation? Or what did you mean exactly when you used the term? Or can you give me an example of when that happened? Or even, how did that affect you?
Okay, those really invite more explanation. Shows you actually care about understanding fully.
Right. And finally, especially if it's a longer chat or things are complex, summarize periodically. Just briefly recap the main points. Okay, so just to recap, it sounds like the main issues are A and B. Can I capture that accurately?
That helps keep everything organized and confirms you're both tracking the same things. Wow, active listening isn't passive at all, is it? It's hard work.
It is. But the payoff is huge. When someone feels genuinely heard, truly understood, their defensiveness just melts away off it. They become way more open to actually hearing your side of things. It builds connection. It de-escalates. It's critical.
Okay, so you've listened brilliantly. You think you understand their perspective. Now it's your turn. You need to share your view, your needs, your feelings. How do you do that clearly, respectfully, without tipping into being aggressive or maybe being too passive and not getting your point across? Especially finding those right words in English.
That's the tightrope walk, isn't it? Finding that balance. And probably the single most powerful technique here is using I statements.
Right. I statements. Break that down for us. How do they actually work?
Okay, so instead of starting with you, like, you did this wrong, or you made me feel, which immediately sounds like an accusation.
That makes people put their walls up.
Instantly. Instead, you focus on your experience, your feelings, the specific behavior you observed, and the impact it had on you. The basic structure is often, I feel your emotion when specific observable behavior happens, because the concrete impact on you.
Okay, let's have an example. Contrast the you way with the I way.
Sure. So instead of say, you always interrupt me in meetings, it's so rude.
Okay, yeah, defensive shields up immediately.
Right. The I statement version might be, I feel frustrated when I'm interrupted during the team meeting because I lose my train of thought and then find it difficult to get back in and share my ideas.
Okay. So you're owning your feeling, frustration, pointing to a specific behavior, being interrupted, and explaining the impact, losing track, hard to contribute. It's not about labeling them as rude.
Exactly. It's about your experience. It's much, much harder to argue with someone's stated feeling and experience than it is with an accusation about your character or intentions. So much less likely to provoke that defensiveness.
That makes a lot of sense. What else helps in expressing yourself clearly?
Being specific and objective. We touched on this with gathering facts for prep. Avoid those big, vague generalizations or judgments. Focus on things anyone could see or hear.
So you're just never prepared for our check-ins.
Right. That's a judgment, and probably an exaggeration. Instead, be specific. I noticed that in our last 2 check-in meetings, the updated sales figures weren't ready when we started. This meant we couldn't fully discuss the projections. See? Factual, specific behavior, direct consequence.
Much clearer and less attacking. Okay, what about disagreeing? How do you say, I don't agree, or I see it differently, politely in English? That can feel really tricky.
It can. A really good strategy is to acknowledge their point first. Show you heard them and maybe even see some validity in it before you introduce your differing view. It cushions the disagreement.
Okay, so
Use bridging phrases. Things like, I understand your point about needing it done quickly, but I'm concerned about the quality if we rush. Or, I really appreciate you sharing that perspective. However, from my side, I see a potential risk with. Or, there's a valid point about the budget. Looking at it another way, though, maybe we could consider.
and using those softeners seems important there too. Words like but, however, though, maybe, perhaps, a bit concerned.
Absolutely. They soften the directness. Using modal verbs like could, might, would also helps. Perhaps we could also consider. Sounds much gentler than we should consider. It makes your view sound less like a direct challenge and more like another option or a concern to explore together.
Got it. What about giving constructive feedback? That's a classic difficult conversation, especially at work.
Yeah, definitely. Similar principles apply. Focus on behavior, not personality. Use I statements about the impact on you or the work. A common structure people find helpful is maybe start with something positive or acknowledge effort, then describe the specific observation, explain the impact, and then suggest a solution or next step. Post-obs impacts all, sort of.
Okay, can you give an example, say, about a report draft?
Sure. Thanks for getting this draft over so quickly. Positive start. I noticed that the data in Section 3 seems to be from last quarter's specific observation. My concern is that if we present this, the client might question if we're fully up-to-date impact. Would you be open to us quickly updating those figures together before we send it? Solution suggestion.
That feels very clear, very focused on the work, and collaborative at the end.
Nice.
One more tricky one. Setting boundaries. Saying no or I need this can feel really difficult, especially across cultures or power dynamics.
It really can. The key is often being clear, polite, and focusing on what you can do or what you need, rather than long, rambling apologies or justifications. Sometimes less is more.
So examples.
Things like, thanks for thinking of me for that project. Unfortunately, I don't have the capacity to take on anything new right now with my current commitments. Or, to make sure I can do a thorough job on this, I'll need until Friday afternoon to complete it. Or even a simple, I generally prefer to keep my personal life separate from work. Polite, direct, states the boundary or the need.
These are such useful, concrete phrases. Just having a few like these in your back pocket must take some of the heat out of the moment.
It really does. Mentally rehearsing them, or even just knowing they exist, makes them easier to grab when you're under pressure.
Okay, so we've prepped, we've listened actively, we've expressed our own side clearly and respectfully. How do we actually move things towards getting somewhere? towards resolution or at least a better understanding.
Right. This is where you really try to shift gears from just talking about the problem to actively working on it together. The goal is to get past people just stating their fixed positions like, I need X, and start exploring the interests underneath the why behind the what.
Okay, interests versus positions.
Exactly. And a huge part of this is trying to separate the people from the problem. That's a classic idea, from negotiation theory. Focus on the issue itself, the challenge you both face, not on blaming or attacking the person.
How do you do that in practice?
Using we language helps a lot. Instead of, why did you create this problem? Try, okay, how can we figure out a solution to the scheduling issue? It immediately frames it as a shared task.
That makes sense. Collaborative language.
It really does. Then dig for those interests. Someone might say their position is, I absolutely need this report by 9 a.m. tomorrow. Okay, why? Ask questions to understand the interest. Maybe it's, I need the key sales figures from that report by 9 a.m. so I can finalize a presentation for a major client meeting at 10. Knowing the interest, getting key figures for the client presentation, might open up other solutions besides the entire report being done.
Right. Maybe you could just provide those key figures by 9 or send a summary.
Exactly. Understanding the why unlocks flexibility. So ask those open-ended questions. Can you tell me a bit more about why that deadline is crucial? Or what are the most important pieces of information you need from this by then?
Okay, uncover the interests. Then what?
Then you brainstorm options together. Try to generate lots of possibilities without judging them at first. Just get ideas out there. Okay, what are all the different ways we could approach this? Or are there any possibilities we haven't even considered yet?
Get creative first, evaluate later.
Precisely. And actively look for common ground. Even when you disagree strongly, there are often shared goals or values hiding underneath. Pointing them out helps build connection. Okay, it sounds like we both agree that maintaining a good relationship with this client is the top priority, right? So it seems we're both looking for a process that's more efficient and less stressful.
Highlighting where you do align can really shift the energy.
It absolutely can. And look, often, reaching a resolution involves some give and take. Compromise. Know what's most important to you and where you might have some flexibility. When you suggest a compromise, phrase it as a question or a possibility.
How so?
Like, would you be open to considering? Or what if we tried this? How would that work for you? Or how about we meet in the middle? Maybe if I can get you X by noon, could you manage Y? It's about exploring possibilities together.
It sounds like a negotiation, but a collaborative one.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah.
And one last really vital skill here, knowing when to hit pause. If things are getting too heated, if you're going in circles, if you just feel stuck or overwhelmed, taking a break is often the smartest move. It's not failure, it's strategy.
How do you suggest that without sounding like you're storming off?
Frame it constructively. I think this is a really important discussion, and I want to make sure we give it our best thinking. Could we maybe take a 10-minute break and then come back to it with fresh eyes? Or, I'm finding myself feeling a bit flooded right now. Would it be okay if we paused here and maybe check this up again after lunch?
Taking that breather can really reset things, can it? Lets the emotional temperature drop.
Incredibly effective. So yeah, focusing on interests, using we, brainstorming, finding common ground, being open to compromise, and knowing when to pause. Those are key for navigating towards a better place.
And bringing it back to the context for our listeners doing this in English, maybe in a U.S. environment or similar Western contexts. Those cultural nuances matter.
They really do. While these core skills are pretty universal, how they look and feel, what's expected can vary. You mentioned the U.S. tendency towards directness.
Right, but it's usually directness that's kind of cushioned, wrapped in politeness.
Exactly. You're generally expected to state your point or your need clearly, using those good I statements, focusing on behavior. But you do it with considerate language. Avoid bluntness that could feel abrasive. Use the softeners, the polite phrasing we talked about. Observing how native speakers around you handle similar situations can be really insightful.
And those active listening things, the nodding, the those are generally expected signs of engagement, right?
Yes, generally. Appropriate eye contact, too, signals you're listening, though, again, what feels appropriate can vary a bit. The key is showing you're tuned in.
And if you're ever unsure, if you think you might have missed a nuance or misunderstood the tone,
just ask. Politely, of course. Sorry, just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, were you suggesting X? Or was it more about Y? Or I want to make sure I'm responding appropriately. Could you clarify what you meant by Asking for clarification is almost always better than guessing wrong and causing more problems.
Understanding those local communication habits helps you land these skills much more effectively.
It really does. It's about adapting the what with the how for that specific context.
Wow. Okay, that was a really rich deep dive. Let's try and quickly recap the absolute core takeaways for someone wanting to get better at these conversations in English.
Okay. First, remember the huge value of preparation. Mindset shift to collaboration. Know your positive goal. Try to understand their side. Manage your own emotions first. Get your objective facts straight. And yeah, prep some key English phrases.
Got it. Prep is foundational. Second, make active listening your go-to skill when they're talking. Full attention, those little verbal cues, paraphrasing to check understanding, asking good, clarifying questions, summarizing when needed, make them feel heard.
Absolutely. Third, when it's your turn, focus on expressing yourself clearly and respectfully. Use those powerful I statements. Stick to specific behaviors, not judgments. Use polite language, especially for disagreement or feedback, and practice stating your boundaries clearly but kindly.
Okay. And fourth, when you're navigating towards resolution, remember to separate the people from the problem, use we language, dig for the underlying interests, not just positions, brainstorm options together, look for that common ground, be willing to compromise smartly, and crucially, know when to take a strategic break.
And underpinning all of that, remember the cultural nuances. Pay attention to expectations around directness, politeness, listening cues in your specific environment. Observe others and don't be afraid to ask for clarification.
It sounds like a lot, but these are definitely skills, which means they take practice, right? You don't just read this and become perfect overnight.
Oh, absolutely not. Be kind to yourself. Start small. Maybe in your next meeting, just focus on really paraphrasing one key point someone makes. Or try using just one I statement in a low-stakes situation.
Each small attempt builds the muscle, builds the confidence, and maybe try to see every difficult conversation, even the ones that don't go perfectly, as a chance to learn. Like afterwards, think, okay, what worked well there? What felt sticky? What might I try differently next time?
Exactly. That reflection is key. And having this kind of collection of strategies and phrases we've talked through that we've sort of extracted here in this deep dive can be a really practical toolkit for you.
They're definitely tools you can pull out when you need them.
For sure.
So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, as you think about tackling your next challenging conversation. What if you started to see these moments not just as obstacles or things to dread, but actually as necessary opportunities? Opportunities to understand someone better, to solve a problem together, and maybe even ultimately to build a stronger relationship. How might that perspective shift change how you approach it?
That's a powerful reframe. Think about that. And just keep practicing. You'll get there.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive today.
Yeah, we really hope this leaves you feeling a bit more equipped and definitely more confident tackling those conversations.
Speak Daily English. Real English every day.